Good morning. I am Kawthar, and I'll be presenting on behalf of the two of us. So, this is our research on the case of Maggie centers and their effect on the health and well-being of occupants. So basically, a brief history of the healthcare architecture is it started from healing places were in caves and homes and moved to religious places. And then there was a period which it was mostly hospitals. And then now we have basically skyscraper hospitals, which are as a result of rapid urbanization and industrialization. So there is the spaces in hospitals are mostly prioritizing diagnosis machines, or they're taking up a lot of energy and carbon use. So the they're leading to unsustainable and unhealthy places for healing. So we have suggested that hospitals move back to the Nightingale movement, which was the most sustainable period in our opinion, because it featured cleanliness, sunlight, fresh air, and gardens in terms of healing people. So one of the main places that has similar features in regards to this are the Maggie centers, which are basically um, cancer care centers, which were founded by Maggie, who was a cancer patient, because she found that by visiting NHS hospitals, they were quite dark and they were not helping to improve her spirits as a patient. And she chose to create these centers where people could get hope and at least feel better about their health, just give them a bit of hope. So there are about 26 centers in the UK and across. And the key themes in the brief of the Maggie centers is natural light, views, and comfort. But the brief itself is a descriptive guide. It's not an the architectural brief, which is calculative or in terms of area, or so it's like cozy libraries, hearty kitchens, welcoming facades, just to make sure that it's comfortable for the users. So for the aim of this research, we want to investigate Maggie Center's designs and their influence in the health and well-being of people, and to bridge the gap between the qualitative and quantitative research in sustainability in healthcare architecture, because right now it's mostly qualitative. So we'll do this by conducting a comparative analysis between, we chose these two Maggie centers, one in Oxford and one in Lanarkshire, and we chose this because they're in the same climate, but they both have two different responses to the design brief. So we studied the light, biophilia, and thermal comfort in simulation software and with close reference to the world standard. So in terms of daylight, we found that both Maggie centers are actually good in terms of um, window to wall area ratio, but they're not good in terms of the daylight balance between the SDA and ASE. So this could be mainly because of their shape and because the spaces near the window are larger than are smaller in proportion than the windows themselves. So that causes too much sunlight being received in the spaces. And then in terms of solar glare, there is enough. They're shading devices, but they're not sufficient enough to protect people from visual discomfort. Then we looked at thermal comfort as well, and in terms of the world standard says that the operative temperature should lie within 80% of the acceptable limits, but they both perform poorly in this regard. And this is because in the Lanarkshire one, there is a heavy thermal mass, which increases the heating demand. And in the Oxford one, there are too many fully glazed facades with ineffective shading devices, which are leading to high solar and heat gains. Then in terms of biophilia, we analyze the qualitative and quantitative aspects. So you can see from the plans that the Lanarkshire one, which is on top, it has courtyards, which kind of help in the private and the public spaces for the people to be able to look at views which help for their nervous system. And then the Oxford one also is surrounded by a lot of plants and trees, which again helps with the patient's psychological and emotional well-being. So in terms of limitations, the analysis is not extensive of all the features and categories of the world standard. And there wasn't enough data available on the architecture and construction details. And of course, the weather data was not extracted from the specific places where the projects are located. But in conclusion, the MAGI centers are not designed in a sustainable manner. They have sustainable qualities, but they can also, they're also placebos and just healing places. But the world standard can be used as a suitable guide to help in achieving a sustainable design in healthcare architecture.
Thank you very much. It was great, very interesting. Any questions from the floor? Anybody has a question?
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the world standard, if the parameters that you've adopted were specifically tailored for a health center, or if they were adapted from, let's say, an office building.
Thank you for the question. I think they're not specific. The world standard does not specify is it office or hospital or residential. So it's just all around different, any type of typology. Yeah.
Users is significantly different, for instance, from an office space, and quite often they may stay in a bed, or the situation may be slightly different in a particular center like the MAGI center.
But the difference was with MAGI centers, it's kind of like you visit the place for a certain amount of time. There are no beds, there are no hospital beds or anything like that. But they do have private spaces where they can go to, and the temperatures are kind of regulated. But of course, that's a loophole in the research as well.
And also, I would like to make a comment through question regarding, when you say in the objective that you want to find out about health and well-being.
Yeah.
And usually it's quite difficult, and we get a lot of criticism regarding the translation in quantitative ways of something that correspond to health and well-being. So how did you go? Because of course you talk about health and well-being, but then what is the definition? How did you go from the greater, the overarching definition to the parameters that can measure that? And you have obviously listed thermal comfort, the biophilia, but is there more perhaps, or how sensitive or how difficult is this process of going from one to the specifics, to the general to the specific? Is it clear what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I think we kind of just picked light, nature, and thermal comfort because those were the key elements of the MAGI centers from the beginning. We didn't think of it in terms of health and well-being elements. Yeah,
I see. Because when you introduce it, you do speak about health and well-being, and
that's true.
And obviously, as a master, I guess if it was a PhD, you will get much more stick about
yes,
about that. But it's something to think about, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very important then to clarify in the limitation that this is what you've been looking at specifically. But very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.